I recall my grandma's life and death only as I remember my mum telling me. From what I can gather, on February the 2nd, 1998, my grandma fell victim to a car accident and died in the hospital sometime later. She was the last of my grandparents on both my mum and dad's side to go. The rest had died long before I was born. I was only 3 years old at the time, and I have a hazy recollection of attending the funeral and seeing my grandma within the casket. I also vaguely remember being quite fascinated as my young mind had not understood the concept of death. I had been travelling for most of my life, considering my dad had worked for the United Airlines, so flying wasn't much of a surprise to me, even though I was only about 8. It was July 2002 if I recall correctly, and my mum had just landed in Chicago from Las Vegas, Nevada, where we were planning to live, and I still do. Customarily, we were driven by my Uncle Ray to my Auntie Linda and Uncle Joe's house in Algonquin. It was a pretty large house and was very cozy to say the least. My mum and I shared a room upstairs, which I believe was my cousin Laurie's room before she moved out. A rather strange coincidence occurred. My mum, Auntie Linda, Uncle Joe, and most of my relatives began to explain stories to me about our family reunions. This, in turn, led to talk about my grandma Lily, the one who the reunions became based around after her death. She was a great woman, very intelligent, very kind and very loving. She flawlessly brought up my mum, my aunts and my uncles. She was the role model for what every woman should be. On top of this, she was very healthy and had no medical ailments before her death, even with her growing age. She had been in her mid-70s at the time, and possibly may have lived to a century had it not been for that fateful day. Hearing these consistently sincere stories from my mum, my aunts and my uncles makes me wish she had lived so I could meet her. One thing so captivating about my grandma was that she was very loving, and she loved all of her children, her children's children, and her friends, and everyone around her with a warm heart. Then came a night that terrified me to the point that it still haunts me. It was about 2 days after the reunion, and my mum and I were getting ready for bed. We had to share one bed in the bedroom, which didn't bother me at all since I didn't start sleeping on my own until I was about 9. It was about 9 or 10 at the time, according to the classical red text digital alarm clock that sat on the nightstand. I woke up in the middle of the night and glanced at the clock, and I remember it being 1:36 AM. Rubbing my eyes and letting them adjust to the darkness, I saw that my mum had left the closet open. As my eyes finally adjusted, I saw a horrifying sight. It was a white figure, resembling an anthropomorphic cloud, vaguely shaped like a human, with no face and only barely discernible limbs. It looked like it was about to sprint across the room, as if it were a blurry shot of a runner in the middle of a race. I blinked my eyes and the figure had changed. This time, instead looking of like it was about to sprint across the room, it appeared to have its hands behind its back. It was staring at me with its faceless head, and I could only stare back, not knowing what to do. I was too frozen to even wake up my mum, who was in the same bed. I just stared, with no idea what to do. I hadn't even realised how much time had passed. It seemed as if morning simply crept up on me. I recall sitting up in the bed, having passed out for what seemed for a short period of time, and I woke to my mum getting ready to go to the mall to pass some time. I began crying, promptly asking my mum to ask me what was wrong. I explained what I saw to her that night. She tried to rationalise it as being a white dress in the closet. There was absolutely nothing white in that closet, only dark clothes. I searched it thoroughly to be sure of this. She had no explanation to this and simply asked me why I didn't wake her up. I didn't know why then, and I still don't know why now. My Uncle Joe, Auntie Linda and Mum all talked to me about it, and they said it was probably Grandma visiting and that I shouldn't be scared. It didn't change my feelings though. I remained scared. Years later, I heard that if a spirit is visiting a relative or a friend, then the hauntee won't feel fear when they see the ghost, despite the awe and surprise. This observation scares me that much more, since I was scared out of my mind at this entity, and I refused to believe it was my grandma. Up to now, I refused to sleep with closets open, and I'm scared of waking up to see something staring at me. I still wonder what I saw in that closet, and whether or not it was my grandma. When I go back to the reunions, I make absolute sure the closet is closed, and I sleep with the light on in that house.